When the first 3 amp pedals by Universal Audio were released, I was impressed after I saw some videos, and I'm pretty impressed by what Universal Audio is doing in general. But I'm a Marshall Plexi guy, I'm not a modeling guy, it's real tube amps for me all day. And then their Lion 68 was released, which should be a Marshall Plexi in a box. And as a small backup for shows and a way of recording at home without waking the baby and wearing out my tube amps, I got interested. Not all demos convinced me though, so I wanted to try it for myself. I'm wondering if this actually does that Marshall thing, that high mid bite, and not a smooth or even woolly version that so many impressions do these days. And if I want to check a Marshall for the real Marshall Plexi sound, one of the first things I do is playing some Paul Kossoff. Alright now, so far so good. It actually does feel and sound like a Plexi, and it does that Marshall thing. But that was on the bridge pickup, and would it still hold up if I use the middle position, which I actually often do. So that was just something I dialed in on the super lead setting, and it actually took me about a minute. I just did it by ear and feel, and it feels and sounds like an actual Marshall to me, which I didn't expect. But how does it compare to an actual Marshall amp? That's the main question I wanted to have answered first, and that's the first thing I recorded. I just used the stock preset on the Lion, and I used my Cap Amp Plus with my own impulse response that I use all the time to record my real Marshall tube amp. The actual Marshall sounded a lot brighter and bitier in this comparison, but that might be down to the way I set up my impulse response in the Cap Amp Plus. I actually use that one in combination with the microphones to actually cut through a mix and not just for playing by myself. So to take that out of the equation, I will turn the speaker simulation of the Lion off and also plug it into the Cap Amp Plus using the same impulse response. And let's see how well that works. And while we're there, let's also see how it handles effects and volume. Well, it handled that like a real amp would if you ask me, and I think the sound got a lot closer to the actual Marshall. And remember, I'm still using this pedal in the stock preset. The only thing I did to the pedal was turn the cap simulation off. So let's compare it to the Marshall again. To me, that sounded almost identical, and if you would show me these clips without titles at the bottom, I would have a hard time picking the actual Marshall. Can it do the same thing with single coils though? Let's try a Telecaster. Still sounds good, and I think on its own it sounds better with the cap sim of the pedal itself, as the IR in my Cap Amp Plus is pretty bright. Now let's complete this comparison and compare with a P90 pickup. Seems like a perfect solution. If the stock preset already sounds this close to my actual amp, imagine what the possibilities are if I actually start tweaking. And this pedal amp has some tweaking options and is probably more flexible than my real Marshall amp. I'm all for real tube amps and I'm a novice as well as a skeptic towards modeling. But I think Universal Audio nailed it on this one because it feels and it sounds like a Marshall plexi should. And you have actual knobs to dial it in instead of a digital display. I just wish that Universal Audio would fix their app because in the week I had this pedal I only got their app working once for 5 minutes and the rest of the time it didn't work. So please look at that, Universal Audio, if you would ever see this video and this issue would still be an actual issue. I wouldn't ditch my real tube amps for this and I have to get used to this workflow. I'm used to having a real tube amp through a real cabinet right behind me. But if the Lion sounds this good, why would I wear out my tube amps just for practicing or making demos? And this is a great tool for that, but also to bring as a backup to shows without having to bring 2 actual amps. And it's great to work with while the baby sleeps. And also when he's awake and he wants to know what daddy's doing in the basement. And I can do that without making him deaf. The reason that I picked the Lion over something like the Tone X is because it's easier to tweak, it's more tactile and it doesn't give me option paralysis. Usually I'm not a modeling guy, but this is like a real amp combined with the cab amp all into one pedal. And I think it's even easier to work with than my real Marshall amp. So even though I still have to find a good workflow with this, even though it will not replace my real amps, I still had a lot of fun playing with this thing in the past week. And I think this will stay. What do you think of the Lion 68? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and I'll see you next time.